Nia Carter kept her spine straight as the velvet curtains parted. The room beyond them was drenched in indulgence. Low amber lights, crystal glasses clinking softly, murmured laughter, polished smooth by money. Men in tailored suits lounged like kings, their watches worth more than her entire life. Women glittered beside them, bored and beautiful. This was not a place meant for someone like her. Every step she took felt like a trespass. She lifted her chin anyway. Nia was 22. Old enough to understand desperation. Old enough to make choices no one should ever have to make. The auctioneer's voice rolled smoothly through the air. "Gentlemen, our final lot of the evening." Her pulse thundered. She didn't look at the crowd. She focused on the floor, the cool marble beneath her heels, grounding herself in the only way she knew how. She reminded herself why she was here. Hospital bills stamped overdue, a younger brother pretending not to be scared, a future that would collapse if she walked away. This was not about shame. This was about survival. "An exclusive, private arrangement," the auctioneer continued, carefully vague. "Discretion guaranteed. All parties are of age." The word age echoed in her head, absurdly loud. Across the room, Malcolm King arrived late. He slipped into his seat without ceremony, shrugging off his coat as if this were just another stop on a long night. Billionaire, investor, playboy. The kind of man tabloids loved and moralists hated. Malcolm had seen it all. Art auctions, offshore deals, indulgences designed to shock. This room usually bored him, until he looked up. She wasn't dressed provocatively. That was the first thing that struck him. No coy smile, no practiced seduction. Just a young black woman standing still beneath the lights, hands clasped in front of her, face calm in a way that didn't belong here. She wasn't selling herself. She was enduring something. The bidding started high. Malcolm barely noticed the numbers climbing. He watched her instead, watched the way her shoulders stiffened each time a voice called out another bid, watched the quiet resolve in her eyes when the auctioneer gestured toward her, as if daring the room to see her as a person. Something twisted in his chest, annoyance maybe, or curiosity sharp enough to hurt. A man 2 rows down laughed as he placed another bid. "Hell of a prize," he muttered. Malcolm's jaw tightened. He didn't need this. He didn't want this. He had walked into 1,000 rooms like this and walked out untouched. But the thought of that man, any of them, winning her made something reckless flare alive in him. 10 million, Malcolm said calmly. The room went silent. Heads turned. Whispers rippled like electricity. The auctioneer blinked, stunned, then recovered quickly. 10 million! Do I hear? No! Another voice snapped. That's insane! Malcolm didn't look away from her. Her eyes lifted then, finally meeting his. There was no gratitude in them. There was no fear either. Only a steady, unflinching awareness that seemed to cut straight through him. "Sold," the auctioneer declared, "to Mr. King." Applause followed, hollow and obscene. Nia exhaled slowly. She hadn't realized she'd been holding her breath. Her legs felt numb, but she forced herself to turn, to face the man who had just changed her life with a number. They stood only a few feet apart now. He was taller than she expected. Colder, too. Wealth clung to him like a second skin. He looked at her as if he were trying to solve a puzzle he hadn't intended to buy. Before anyone could speak for him, Nia lifted her chin and met his gaze fully. "This doesn't mean you own me," she said quietly. The words landed between them, soft, steady, and impossible to ignore. Malcolm King smiled slowly. For the first time that night, he felt something dangerously close to awake. The contract room was colder than the auction hall. Glass walls framed the city skyline. lights glittering like distant stars that had nothing to do with Nia Carter's life. She sat on the edge of a leather chair that probably cost more than her childhood home, hands folded neatly in her lap. She refused to fidget. Fear was already here. She wouldn't give it more space by letting it show. Across from her, Malcolm King stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and clipped as he finished a call. Business. Always business. When he finally turned, his gaze flicked over her like an assessment, sharp and unreadable. "You can go," he said to the lawyer. The man hesitated, glanced at Nia, then left without a word. The door shut softly behind him. Silence settled. Nia broke it first. "I want to be clear." Malcolm arched an eyebrow, faintly amused. "You're in no position to negotiate." She met his eyes without flinching. "I disagree." That surprised him. He studied her more carefully now, the way she held herself, the calm resolve that hadn't cracked since the stage. Most women in this room would be trembling, some would be crying, some would already be angling for more. Nia Carter was doing none of it. "Say what you want," Malcolm said, folding his arms. "Then I'll tell you what's possible." She inhaled slowly. "This arrangement is private. No cameras, no friends. No showing me off." A corner of his mouth twitched. "You think I bought you for company photos?" "I think men like you enjoy power," she replied evenly. "I won't be used for entertainment." The words were not accusatory. They were factual. That, more than anything, irritated him. "Continue," he said. "There will be no touching unless I agree," she went on. "No surprises. No humiliation, and this ends when the agreed time ends. Clean. No extensions." Malcolm let out a short laugh. "You're asking me to pay millions for rules." "I'm asking you to treat me like a human being," she corrected softly. That landed harder than it should have. Malcolm moved closer, stopping just short of her personal space. "You know what people would give for the position you were in?" "I know," Nia said. "That's why I'm protecting what little control I have left." For a long moment he said nothing. Then he turned and picked up the contract from the table, flipping through it with practiced ease. He struck lines with a pen, added notes in the margins. "Time frame," he said aloud. 3 months. Her breath caught, but she nodded. "Fine." "Exclusive residence," he continued. "Here. I'll need my own space." "You'll have it." She hesitated, then added quietly, "And my brother is off limits. Completely." Something in her voice shifted then, steel beneath the calm. Malcolm looked at her sharply. "No one touches your family." He didn't know why he said it with such certainty. He only knew he meant it. He slid the contract across the table toward her. "Sign." Nia picked up the pen. Her hand shook this time. She hated that it did. She hated that he saw it. Before she could sign, Malcolm added one final line and pushed the paper back. Her eyes narrowed as she read it. Clause 27. The arrangement may be terminated early at the discretion of the buyer, with full financial compensation to the seller, no conditions attached. She looked up slowly. "Why would you add that?" Malcolm met her gaze. For the first time, something unreadable flickered there. "Because," he said evenly, "if you ever decide you can't do this anymore, I don't want you trapped." Nia searched his face, confused, suspicious, guarded. She signed anyway. The pen clicked softly against glass as she set it down. "It's done," Malcolm said. Nia stood, smoothing her jacket. "Then understand this, Mr. King." She paused at the door, turning back just once. "You won the auction," she said, "but you didn't win me." When she left, the room felt colder than before. Malcolm King stared at the signed contract in his hand and wondered, for the first time in years, if money had finally failed to buy him what he wanted. Nia moved into the penthouse at dawn. The city was still yawning awake when the car pulled up beneath the towering glass building. She stepped out with one small suitcase and a backpack slung over her shoulder, feeling absurdly light for someone whose life had just been weighed in millions. The doorman greeted her with practiced politeness, eyes skimming over her without judgment, or perhaps with too much restraint to show it. The elevator ride was silent. When the doors opened, she expected excess. What she didn't expect was the quiet. The penthouse was vast, yes, floor-to-ceiling windows, marble floors that gleamed like ice, but it felt sterile, untouched, like a place designed to impress rather than live. Malcolm wasn't there. A house manager showed her to a private guest suite at the far end, complete with its own sitting room and balcony overlooking the river. "This area is yours," the woman said. "Mr. King prefers privacy." Nia nodded. She preferred distance. Left alone, she sat on the edge of the bed and let the silence press in. She traced her thumb over the fraying strap of her bag, grounding herself. This was temporary, 3 months, an arrangement. She would endure it the way she had endured everything else, quietly, with dignity. By noon, Malcolm returned. Nia heard him before she saw him. Low voices, laughter, the clink of ice in glasses. She stayed in her room, telling herself she had no interest in his world. Still, when she stepped out later to get water, she froze at the sound of his voice drifting from the open lounge. Don't know why you're surprised," Malcolm was saying, amusement laced through his tone. "It's a transaction, clean and simple." Another man chuckled. "Still, that kind of money for one girl?" Malcolm's reply came easily, too easily. "Money's never been the issue." Nia's chest tightened. She backed away silently, retreating to her room before they could see her. The door closed with a soft click, but the words echoed anyway. Transaction, never been the issue. She sat down slowly, fingers curling into the fabric of her dress. She told herself not to feel foolish. She hadn't come here for kindness. She hadn't expected respect. And yet, some small, dangerous part of her had hoped. That night, tabloids lit up. A blurry photo surfaced online. Malcolm stepping out of a car earlier that day, Nia half hidden behind him. The headline screamed speculation. Billionaire King's new mystery woman? Nia found it accidentally, scrolling on her phone while pretending she wasn't alone. Her stomach dropped. Comments piled beneath the photo, cruel and careless. She locked the screen, heart pounding, just as a knock came at her door. Malcolm stood there, jaw tight. "I told them to pull it," he said, before she could speak. "They won't get anything else." She studied him warily. "I didn't agree to be seen." "I know." His voice was clipped. "It won't happen again." Something in his tone, irritation edged with something like guilt, made her pause. "Why do you care?" she asked quietly. Malcolm looked away. "Because I said it wouldn't." That answer unsettled her more than indifference would have. Days passed in an odd rhythm. They crossed paths occasionally, brief conversations, shared silences. Malcolm watched her more than he spoke, not in the way men usually did, with hunger or entitlement, but with a sharp curiosity that made her skin prickle. One evening, she found him alone in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, staring at nothing. "You don't eat much," he said, without turning. "I eat enough." A beat. "You don't ask for anything either." She leaned against the counter. "I didn't come here to take." He looked at her then, really looked. "Then why did you come?" The question wasn't accusatory, it was genuine. "For my family," she said simply. Malcolm nodded once, no judgment, no pity. Later that night, unable to sleep, Nia wandered onto the balcony. The city stretched endlessly below her, loud and alive. She wrapped her arms around herself, breathing in the night air, until voices drifted up from the living room again. "I won't get attached," Malcolm was saying into his phone. "I didn't buy her for love." Nia closed her eyes. The words slid under her skin, sharp and final. She stood there for a long moment, staring out at the city, reminding herself of the truth she couldn't afford to forget. This was never meant to change him. It was only meant to save her. Malcolm King hated the South Side. The thought came to him uninvited as his car rolled past cracked sidewalks and boarded storefronts, past murals faded by time and weather. This wasn't his world. He'd fought too hard to escape places like this, places where ambition was survival, where failure was inherited. He hadn't been back in years, and yet here he was. "Just drop me here," he told the driver abruptly. The car slowed to a stop. Malcolm stepped out, adjusting his coat as if it were armor. The driver hesitated. "Sir, I'll call when I'm ready." The car pulled away, leaving Malcolm standing alone on a street that smelled like exhaust and fried food, laughter drifting from somewhere nearby. He scanned the block until he spotted Nia across the street, a paper bag tucked under her arm as she walked toward a narrow brick building. She froze when she saw him. "What are you doing here?" she asked, disbelief sharpening her voice. "I wanted to see where you came from," he said simply. Her eyes narrowed. "This isn't a tour." "I know." For a moment she looked like she might turn around and walk away. Instead, she sighed and unlocked the building door. "Don't make this a spectacle." Inside, the stairwell was dim but clean. Children's voices echoed from above. When they reached the apartment, the door flew open before Nia could knock. "Nia!" A teenage boy grinned, relief lighting his face. "You're back early." "This is my brother, Jamal," she said, guarded. "Jamal, this is Malcolm." Jamal looked Malcolm up and down, unimpressed. "You rich or something?" Nia hissed his name, mortified. Malcolm surprised them both by laughing. "Something like that." The apartment was small but warm. Family photos lined the walls. A sense of life, real life, pressed in on Malcolm, in a way penthouses never did. He watched Nia move through the space, softer here, less guarded. This was where her strength came from. Later, as Jamal retreated to his room, Nia crossed her arms. "You didn't have to come." "I know," Malcolm said. "I wanted to." She studied him, searching for mockery, judgment, anything, finding none unsettled her. "Why?" He hesitated. Honesty felt dangerous. "Because I needed to understand what you were protecting." Something shifted in her expression, not gratitude, not trust, but acknowledgement. That night, Malcolm made a call. By morning, the hospital debt was gone. Nia found out 3 days later. She was sitting at the kitchen table in the penthouse, sipping tea she hadn't asked for, when her phone rang. Her aunt's voice came through, breathless and laughing through tears. "They cleared it, baby," she said. "All of it. Said it was handled. No explanation." Nia's hand tightened around the phone. "What?" "The bills, the hospital, everything." Her heart pounded as she ended the call slowly. There was only one person in the world who could do that with a signature. She found Malcolm in his office that evening. "You paid my debt," she said flatly. He didn't look up from his laptop. "I took care of a problem." "That wasn't your problem." "It is when it affects you." She slammed her hand on the desk. "You don't get to do that. You don't get to decide things for me." Malcolm finally looked up, irritation flaring. "I helped you." "You controlled me," she shot back. "That money was leverage." His jaw tightened. "I didn't ask for anything in return." "That's worse," Nia said quietly, "because now I owe you something I never agreed to give." Silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Malcolm stood slowly. "I did it because I wanted to," he said. "Not because of the contract." She laughed bitterly. Everything here is because of the contract. He opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. For the first time, he had no defense. Nia stepped back, eyes shining with unshed tears. I didn't come here to be saved, she said. I came here to survive. When she walked out, the door closing softly behind her, Malcolm remained standing alone in the office. For the first time in years, the power he wielded felt like a curse, and the silence she left behind was louder than any accusation. The dress arrived without a note. It hung in the doorway of Nia's room like a challenge. Midnight blue silk, elegant in a way that whispered rather than shouted. No sequins, no plunging neckline, just clean lines and quiet luxury. The kind of dress chosen by someone who paid attention. Nia stared at it longer than she meant to. She hadn't spoken much to Malcolm since their argument. He'd given her space, real space this time. No hovering, no apologies wrapped in money. That restraint unsettled her more than his arrogance ever had. A soft knock came at her door. Car leaves in 20 minutes, the house manager said gently. Mr. King requests your presence. Requests, not demands. Nia exhaled and reached for the dress. The charity gala was held at a museum overlooking the river, marble columns glowing under floodlights. Cameras lined the entrance, flashes bursting like fireworks as Malcolm stepped out of the car. He looked every inch the man the world expected. Tailored tux, easy confidence, a smile sharpened by money and power. Then he turned and offered his hand. Nia hesitated only a second before taking it. The crowd murmured, heads turned, whispers followed them as they walked inside together. She could feel the weight of it, the assumptions, the curiosity, the judgments, but Malcolm's grip was steady, grounding. You don't have to stay long, he murmured. We make an appearance, donate, leave. She nodded. This is part of the cover. Yes, he said. Then, after a beat, but I won't let them tear you apart. Something about that made her chest tighten. Inside, the air buzzed with champagne and old money. People greeted Malcolm warmly, eyes flicking to Nia with open curiosity. Some smiled politely. Others didn't bother hiding their disdain. So, this is her, a woman said lightly as they approached, her gaze assessing. Beautiful, expensively bored. You've been quiet lately, Malcolm. Busy, he replied smoothly. Nia felt it then. The shift. The way Malcolm's posture changed when another man stepped closer, introducing himself with an easy smile. Evan Brooks, he said, extending a hand to Nia. I work with the foundation. You look stunning. Thank you, Nia said, returning the handshake. Evan didn't let go right away. Malcolm noticed, his jaw tightened, a flash of something dark crossing his face before he masked it. We should speak with the director, he said, placing a hand at the small of Nia's back. It was brief, careful, but it sent a spark straight through her. They moved through the room together, playing their roles. Malcolm was charming, attentive in a way she hadn't seen before. He introduced her by name, not as an accessory, not as a mystery, as if she belonged beside him. When another guest made a thinly veiled comment about her background, Malcolm shut it down with a cool smile that left no room for argument. Nia watched him with quiet astonishment. Later, on the balcony overlooking the river, she finally spoke. You didn't have to do that. Yes, he said simply. I did. She studied him under the soft lights, the city reflected in his eyes. Why? Malcolm hesitated, the truth pressed against his ribs, dangerous and unwelcome. Because you deserve respect, he said finally. Her breath caught. Before she could respond, laughter drifted out onto the balcony. Evan again. He glanced between them, sensing the tension. I'm stealing her for a dance, he said lightly. Nia looked to Malcolm, unsure. "Go," Malcolm said, his voice even. Too even. She went. From across the room, Malcolm watched them move together. Evan leaned in, smiling, making Nia laugh in a way Malcolm hadn't yet managed. Jealousy flared hot and unfamiliar, catching him off guard. He told himself it was territorial instinct, pride, nothing more. But when Evan's hand slid a little too low on Nia's back, Malcolm's patience snapped. He crossed the room and interrupted without apology. "She's tired." Nia blinked. I'm fine." Malcolm met her gaze, something unspoken burning there. "We should leave." Evan raised his hands, amused. "Didn't mean to offend." "You didn't," Malcolm said coolly. "But the night's over." The drive back was silent. In the elevator, the tension became unbearable. The doors slid shut, sealing them in glass and steel. Nia turned to him, frustration simmering. "You don't get to decide who I talk to." "I didn't," Malcolm snapped. "I removed us from a situation." "You were jealous." The word hung between them. Malcolm scoffed. "Don't be ridiculous." Nia stepped closer, anger sharpening her courage. "You don't get to feel things you won't name." His breath hitched. The elevator hummed upward, painfully slow. When the doors finally opened, they didn't move. They stood there, inches apart, the city glittering behind them. "I shouldn't want you," Malcolm said quietly. Nia swallowed. "Then don't." His hand lifted, hovering near her face, stopping just short of touching her. For a moment the world narrowed to breath and heartbeat, and everything unsaid. Then Malcolm dropped his hand. "Good night, Nia," he said roughly, turning away. She watched him walk down the hall, heart pounding, knowing with sudden clarity that the most dangerous thing about this arrangement wasn't the contract. It was the fact that the lines between them were already disappearing. Malcolm King did not get sick. That was the narrative he'd built his life around. Invincible, untouchable, always in control. So when the fever hit him in the middle of the night, it felt less like illness and more like betrayal. His body ached, head pounding, thoughts blurred in a way he hated. He barely remembered calling for help. Nia heard the sound first, a dull thud from the other side of the penthouse, followed by a strained curse. She hesitated only a second before following it. When she found him slumped against the kitchen counter, face pale and damp with sweat, her breath caught. "Malcolm?" she said, sharper than she meant to. "I'm fine," he muttered, which was immediately followed by a cough that bent him forward. She didn't argue. She stepped in, steadying him without asking permission. He was heavier than he looked, solid and unyielding, even when weak. She guided him to the couch, ignoring his half-hearted protests. "You're burning up," she said, pressing the back of her hand to his forehead. "I said I'm fine." "You're terrible at lying." That earned a faint, humorless huff. She fetched water, medication the house manager kept stocked, and a cool cloth. When she returned, Malcolm had given up pretending to sit upright. "Take these," she said, holding out the pills. He eyed them suspiciously. "You trying to poison me?" "If I were, I'd let you keep talking," she replied. That made him laugh, an actual laugh, low and unguarded. It startled both of them. Hours passed quietly. Nia stayed, changing the cloth, coaxing him to drink. The penthouse felt different in the dim light, stripped of its sharp edges. Malcolm drifted in and out of sleep, words slipping loose when his guard was down. "Don't do that," he murmured at one point. "Do what?" "Look at me like that, like I matter." Her hand stilled. "You do matter." He shook his head faintly. "Only what I can provide. That's how it's always been." The confession slipped out like a wound opening. Nia sat back, heart tightening. "That's not true." "It is," he said softly. My father didn't notice me until I started making money. My friends, they're loyal to the lifestyle. Women? A humorless smile tugged at his lips. They love what I represent, not me. She hesitated, then spoke quietly. And the betrayal you mentioned before? His eyes opened, unfocused but honest. She waited until the company went public. Then she took what she could and disappeared, said I was incapable of love anyway. Nia absorbed that in silence. It explained too much. You believed her, she said. Yes. She reached out without thinking, her fingers brushing his wrist. He stilled, but didn't pull away. I don't, she said simply. His gaze shifted to her, something raw flickering there. You should. I don't know you well enough to hate you, she replied, but I know enough to see you're not empty. For a long moment he just looked at her, defenses stripped bare by fever and exhaustion. You scare me, he admitted. Good, she said gently. You scare me too. By morning, the fever broke. Malcolm woke to sunlight filtering through the windows and the faint smell of coffee. For a moment, he didn't remember where he was, or why his chest felt so tight. Then he saw Nia asleep in the chair beside him, head tilted back, blanket draped awkwardly over her. She'd stayed. The realization hit him harder than any illness. He shifted slightly, and she stirred, blinking awake. You're up, she said, relief softening her voice. How do you feel? Like I lost a fight with my own body, he said, then, more quietly, thank you. She shrugged, trying to deflect the intimacy. You'd do the same. He didn't answer right away. He wasn't sure that was true. Later that afternoon, they sat on opposite ends of the couch, the distance between them charged with things neither knew how to say. The city hummed beyond the glass, indifferent to the shift happening inside. I meant what I said at the gala, Malcolm said finally, about not wanting you to be trapped. Nia studied him. Then stop acting like you're the only one who gets hurt. His jaw tightened. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. Care without control. That's the risk, she said, for both of us. The air between them softened. He reached for her hand this time, slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Their fingers intertwined, tentative and warm. No rush, no claim, just contact. Malcolm exhaled, something in his chest loosening for the first time in years. He wanted to pull her closer, to seal the moment before it could slip away, but fear held him back. I won't fall for you, he said, as much a warning to himself as to her. Nia's lips curved into a sad, knowing smile. You already are. He didn't deny it, and that, more than any contract or auction, terrified him. The woman arrived like a memory Malcolm had tried to bury. Nia first saw her in the penthouse lobby, stepping out of a sleek black car as if she owned the air around her. Tall, flawless, dressed in white that cost more than most people's rent. Her smile was sharp, practiced, and utterly confident. Who is that? Nia asked quietly. Malcolm's entire body went rigid. Someone I hoped never to see again, he said. The woman's heels clicked across the marble as she approached, eyes locking onto Malcolm with proprietary ease. Mal, she said warmly, as if no time had passed. You didn't change your address. That's comforting. Serena, Malcolm replied coolly. You're early. Serena's gaze slid to Nia then, slow and deliberate. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. And you must be the girl. Nia straightened. I have a name. Serena's smile widened, amused. Of course you do. Malcolm stepped forward, placing himself subtly between them. This isn't the place. Serena laughed lightly. Relax, I just came to see you. Her eyes flicked back to Nia. Though I have to say, I expected something different. Something in Nia's chest tightened, but she held her ground. I'm not here to meet your expectations. Serena tilted her head, studying her like a curiosity. You're sweet, she said. That won't last. Malcolm's voice dropped. Leave. Serena's gaze snapped back to him, surprise flickering before irritation took its place. I flew across the country for you. You lost that right a long time ago. The tension crackled. Serena recovered quickly, smoothing her expression. We'll talk later, she said softly. You and I always do. She turned and walked away without another glance. Nia let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. That was your ex, she said. Yes. The one who betrayed you? Yes. She hesitated. Does she know about the arrangement? Malcolm's jaw tightened. Not yet. The answer didn't comfort her. By evening, the internet did what it always did. A photo surfaced, Serena leaving Malcolm's building. Headlines followed within minutes, speculative and cruel. King reunites with ex, mystery girl erased. Nia read the comments she shouldn't have. They burned. She looks temporary. He always goes back to Serena, another girl who thought she was special. She locked her phone and pressed her palm to her chest, trying to breathe. When Malcolm found her later, sitting alone on the balcony, the city lights blurring in her eyes, he immediately knew something was wrong. She didn't mean anything, he said. Nia didn't look at him. I didn't ask. He stepped closer. You saw the headlines. Yes. I'll handle it. That's the problem, she said quietly. You always handle things. You never tell me the truth. He frowned. What truth do you think I'm hiding? Nia turned then, eyes sharp. How many times have you done this? Done what? Gone to those auctions, she said. How many women were there before me? The question hit him like a punch. That's not... Answer me. Silence stretched. Malcolm looked away. The answer was written all over his face. Nia's throat tightened. I didn't want to know, she whispered, but I need to. Yes, he said finally. I've been to them before. Her breath shuddered. So I was just another... No. His voice was firm now. Never that. But you didn't hesitate, she said. You saw me on that stage and you bid like it was nothing. I didn't know you, he said. I know you now. She laughed softly, broken. That's not comforting. She stood, backing away. I found something today. Malcolm's chest tightened. What? She held out her phone. On the screen was an anonymous message. Photos of past auctions, masked bidders, Malcolm unmistakable among them. Time-stamped, documented. You didn't just stumble into that room, she said. You belonged there. Malcolm stared at the screen, then at her. I won't lie to you, he said. I was part of that world, but I never saw it the way I did that night. I never saw them as people. And then you saw me, Nia said. And what? I changed everything? Yes, he said without hesitation. She shook her head. That's not romantic. That's terrifying. She turned toward her room, heart hammering. Nia, he said, reaching for her arm. She pulled away. Don't! The word was sharp, final. I need to know, she said, voice trembling despite her control. If I hadn't been different, if I'd been quieter or flirtier or broken, would you have cared? Malcolm opened his mouth. No answer came. Tears burned her eyes. That's what I thought. She walked away before he could stop her. Malcolm stood alone on the balcony long after the door closed. For the first time, the truth wasn't something he could buy his way out of. And somewhere down the hall, Nia packed a bag with shaking hands, knowing one thing with painful clarity. The man she was falling for had built his life on a system that had nearly destroyed her. And love, she realized, might not be enough to survive that truth. Nia packed with deliberate slowness. Each folded shirt, each careful placement into the suitcase felt like an act of defiance. If she moved too fast, she might break. If she stopped, she might not start again. The penthouse was quiet. No footsteps, no interruptions. Malcolm had given her space. Whether out of respect or fear, she didn't know. Her phone buzzed on the bed beside her. "Jamal, you okay?" "Auntie said you sounded tired." She stared at the message until the words blurred. "Nia, I'm okay. I'll be home soon." "Home." The word felt fragile but steadying. She zipped the suitcase, then paused, hand resting on the metal pull. For a moment she let herself feel it, the loss she hadn't planned for. Not the money, not the safety. Him. The way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching. The way his voice softened when he said her name. She hated herself for how much that hurt. When she stepped into the hall, Malcolm was there. He hadn't heard her leave. Or maybe he had, and had been waiting, wrestling with whatever words he thought might save this. He looked tired in a way no fever could explain. Eyes shadowed, shoulders tense. "You're leaving," he said. "Yes." He nodded once, absorbing it. "Let me explain." She shifted the suitcase to her other hand. "You already did." "That's not true," he said, stepping closer. "I haven't told you everything." She met his gaze, steady and sad. "That's the problem, Malcolm. I shouldn't need more." He reached for the suitcase handle, stopping short of touching it. "I ended it." She blinked. "Ended what?" "The auctions," he said. "All of it. I shut them down. I exposed the network. Lawyers are involved. People are furious." Her breath caught, despite herself. "Why?" "Because I couldn't look at myself knowing I'd ever been part of it." He swallowed. "Because of you." "That doesn't fix what already happened," she said gently. "I know." His voice roughened. "But it matters." She considered him in silence. He looked sincere. He sounded changed, and that terrified her more than if he hadn't. "Change that depends on one person isn't stable," she said. "It's pressure. It breaks." "I'm not asking you to be my reason," he said. "I'm telling you that you were my wake-up call." She closed her eyes for a brief second, gathering strength. "You don't get to build redemption on my pain." The words landed hard. Malcolm flinched as if struck. "Then tell me what to do," he said quietly. "Tell me how to make this right." Nia opened her eyes. "You can't. Not with me." Silence pressed in around them, thick and unforgiving. "I meant what I said," he added, voice low. "About the clause. You can leave with everything, no conditions." "I know," she said, "and I'm grateful." "That's not all," he said, pulling a folder from the table nearby. He handed it to her. "Your brother's scholarship, your aunt's mortgage, everything is handled, legally, transparently." Her throat tightened. "You promised no leverage." "This isn't leverage," he said. "It's an apology. Ito Nia Paji." The penthouse felt like a museum after closing hours. Too quiet, too hollow. Malcolm stood in the center of the living room, surrounded by the echoes of a life he no longer recognized. Half the furniture was gone. Sold, donated, removed without ceremony. The walls were bare where art once hung simply to signal wealth. What remained was space and silence. He had chosen this. The board meeting that morning had been brutal. "You're asking us to accept losses that could take years to recover from," one director snapped. "I'm asking you to accept responsibility," Malcolm replied evenly. Another leaned forward. "You've tied the company's name to a scandal. Investors are nervous." "They should be," Malcolm said. "So should we." The room had gone cold then. "You're willing to give up controlling interest?" someone asked incredulously. "Yes." The word had felt like a guillotine dropping, clean, final. By the time the meeting ended, Malcolm King was no longer untouchable. He was still wealthy, still powerful by any reasonable measure. But the empire he'd built on unchecked dominance was cracked down the middle. The press called it madness. His former friends called it self-destruction. Malcolm called it necessary, because every time he closed his eyes, he saw her. Not the woman on the auction stage, but Nia in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, arguing with him about control. Nia asleep in the chair beside him while he burned with fever. Nia walking into the elevator, telling him not to follow unless he could come without power. He hadn't followed, but he hadn't stood still either. The knock at the door came just after sunset. Malcolm didn't bother checking who it was. He already knew. Serena stepped inside like she still belonged there, eyes sweeping the stripped-down space with open disdain. "You really did lose your mind," she said. "You should leave," Malcolm replied calmly. She laughed. "You threw away everything for her." "For myself," he corrected. She crossed her arms. "She's gone. And what did it get you? Your bleeding money, influence, reputation." Malcolm met her gaze, unflinching. "I can live with that." Serena's smile faded. "You think this makes you noble? It doesn't erase what you are." "No," he said, "but it stops me from being worse." She stepped closer, voice lowering. "Come back with me. We can fix this. You and I, we always knew how to survive." Malcolm shook his head. "Survival isn't enough anymore." Her eyes hardened. "She didn't even choose you." The words were meant to wound. They did, but not the way she intended. "You're right," Malcolm said softly, "and that's the point." Serena stared at him, then scoffed. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," he said, "but I won't regret letting you go." She stormed out, heels echoing sharply against the floor. Malcolm exhaled slowly, a strange sense of relief settling in his chest. Across the city, Nia was locking up the art center when a familiar voice stopped her short. "Miss Carter?" She turned, heart skipping. A woman stood near the doorway, mid-40s, dressed simply, eyes kind but cautious. "Yes?" "My name is Denise Wright," the woman said. "I'm with a non-profit that supports survivors of exploitation." Nia stiffened instinctively. "How did you find me?" "Malcolm King gave us your name," Denise said quickly. "Not your address. He told us not to contact you unless you reached out first. I know this is sensitive." Nia studied her, pulse racing. "Then why are you here?" Denise hesitated. "Because he asked me to tell you something, and only if you wanted to hear it." Nia's fingers tightened around her keys. "What?" "That he testified today, publicly, against people far more powerful than him." Her breath caught. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because," Denise said gently, "he didn't do it quietly. He didn't shield himself. He didn't ask for immunity." Nia swallowed hard. "That doesn't change what happened." "No," Denise agreed, "but it may change what happens next. For others." Nia nodded slowly. "Thank you." Denise smiled faintly. "For what it's worth, he never spoke about you like a possession, only like a mirror." When Nia was alone again, she sat on the steps outside the center, the city humming around her. She pressed her palms together, breathing through the familiar ache in her chest. She didn't want to care, but she did. The threat came 3 days later. Malcolm was in his office, now little more than a desk and a laptop, when his phone rang. "You're making enemies," the voice on the other end said coldly. "This crusade of yours, it ends, or the girl pays the price." Malcolm's blood ran cold. "If you touch her—" "You don't have the leverage you think you do anymore," the voice cut in. "Choose wisely." The line went dead. Malcolm didn't hesitate. He grabbed his coat and keys, heart pounding, fear sharper than anything he'd felt before. Not for himself, But for her, he called every contact he had left, set protections in motion, exposed names he'd planned to hold back. By the time he reached Nia's neighborhood, the sky was dark and heavy with rain. He spotted her at the bus stop, coat pulled tight around her, unaware of the danger brushing past her life. He didn't approach. He stayed across the street, watching as two unfamiliar men slowed nearby, then abruptly turned away as a black SUV rolled silently into view. Security, in place, safe. Only then did Malcolm allow himself to breathe. Nia looked up then, as if sensing something. Her gaze crossed the street and landed on him. They froze. Rain fell between them, blurring the world. Malcolm stepped forward, but stopped himself. No power, no control, no demands. Nia walked toward him instead, confusion and guarded emotion warring in her eyes. "Why are you here?" she asked. "To make sure you're safe," he said simply. Her voice trembled despite her composure. "And now?" "Now," he said, "I walk away again, unless you ask me not to." Silence stretched, filled with everything they'd broken and everything they'd survived. Nia looked at him, really looked, not the billionaire, not the buyer, the man who had fallen. "I'm not ready," she said honestly. He nodded. "Neither am I." She hesitated. "But, thank you." Malcolm gave a small, genuine smile. "For the first time in my life," he said quietly, "that's enough." He turned and walked away, rain soaking through his coat, heart heavy but clear. Behind him, Nia watched until he disappeared into the night, knowing the hardest part was no longer letting go. It was deciding whether, someday, she might let him back in. The townhouse was simple, warm, books instead of art, coffee mugs instead of crystal. Nia took it in quietly. "You really did change everything," she said. He nodded. "Including the parts that scared me." She turned to face him fully. "I didn't come here to forgive you." "I know. I didn't come here because I missed the comfort, or the money." "I know." She took a breath. "I came because I needed to know if the man standing in front of me is the same one who would have raised his hand at that auction." Malcolm didn't hesitate. "He's dead." Her throat tightened. "And if loving me costs you again, status, safety, control." He met her gaze, unflinching. "Then it costs me, not you." Silence stretched between them, fragile and electric. Nia stepped closer. "I won't be owned, not emotionally, not ever." "I don't want ownership," he said. "I want partnership, and if that's too much." She reached out and placed her hand over his heart. He froze. "Don't," she said quietly. "Don't retreat before I finish." She swallowed, vulnerability cracking through her strength. "I'm terrified, because loving you means trusting that people can change, and I've learned the hard way how dangerous that belief can be." Malcolm's voice was barely audible. "I won't ask you to be brave for me." "Good," she said, "because I'm choosing this anyway." His breath hitched. "This isn't a contract," she continued. "It's not a promise of forever. It's just a start, on equal ground." Tears blurred his vision. "That's more than I deserve." She shook her head. "Deserve isn't the point. Choice is." He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Their kiss was gentle, not desperate, not claiming. Just two people meeting where neither had power over the other. When they parted, Nia rested her forehead against his. "This doesn't erase the past." "I wouldn't want it to," Malcolm said. "It reminds me who I refuse to be again." 6 months later, the Art Center hosted its first citywide exhibition. Kids' paintings lined the walls. Parents laughed. Music filled the space. Nia moved through the room with quiet pride. Malcolm stood near the back, hands in his pockets, content to observe. He wasn't introduced as a benefactor or a savior, just Malcolm. When Nia joined him, he leaned in. You did this? We did, she corrected, smiling. Across the room, Jamal waved at them, grinning. Malcolm smiled back, something warm and steady settling in his chest. For the first time in his life, love wasn't something he purchased, controlled, or feared. It was something he earned, day by day, choice by choice. And Nia, standing beside him, knew the truth that had carried her through every hardship. She had sold nothing of herself that night, because the one thing that mattered most, her worth, had never been for sale. Here comes the end of the story. If I was able to make your day, comment Mr. Hope you made my day.